I was in the U.S. Army, and my assignment was to make sure that the radios worked between our aircraft and support ground troops. We were what's called I Corps. I Corps was the northernmost tactical area in South Vietnam. We're in the South China Sea, DMZ on the top, and which I talked to you before. Anyway, here's an idea what we had. This is the plane. I was not a pilot. I was in the back seat. And this is the plane. It's a Cessna 172. It was first developed in World War II. And its goal was to reconnaissance. And by the time it got to Vietnam, it used to be fabric, then it was metal. And our job was, as I say, to support the ground troops. It happened to be Marines when I was there in June of 1966. They were the only units, combat units up there. Later the Army would come in late 60, well, mid-67, and but that was our job. I know more about the Marines than I do about the Army because of that service. This is a difficult assignment for me because I got thinking about it, and I talked to my wife about it. I want to be truthful about the whole thing. I talked to two of my buddies every year. The survivors of 66, 67, we meet somewhere. Last year was Minneapolis, probably this year it'll be Boston. And there's maybe 12, 15 of us still, 14 of us left. And when we get together, we talk about, a little bit about the war, things that happened to us, usually humorous. And then we talk about our current lives. We all love each other, we get along really well. But the big elephant that's always in the room is the question that's never asked, was it worth it? Was it worth it, what we did, and the sacrifices that we made? We lost several men in my unit. 4 of them were never recovered because they were in the southern part of North Vietnam. And corpses in Vietnam, in that area, because of the heat and the weather, they don't survive very long, so there's no hope we'll ever probably find them. The hardest part for me in this is being truthful and saying that when Joe said that he re-upped for a year because of the Berlin crisis, that's patriotism, that's love of country, that's sacrifice. That's what we went to Vietnam with that kind of a love of country and sacrifice. We were willing to give up our lives for our country. Why was that? Because in 1966, when I went, we were fighting communists, and we were going to support the Saigon government. We never dreamed later on that really wasn't what was going on, but let me wait and hold off on that for just a second. More about my background as to why I'm such fervor as a patriot. I'm the 5th generation of my family to go and fight in combat. My father was a World War II pilot, B-17. He was shot down twice, the second time badly wounded. He was flying over Calais. They were trying to, during D-Day, they were trying to fool the Germans into thinking that we were going to invade there and not in Normandy. My great uncle was also an aviator, and he flew in World War I. He went over with Rickenbacker's unit. He also, he claims he was shot down. I think he had an accident that knocked him out of the air. My other great-grandfather fought the Spanish-American War, and I had 2 great-great-uncles that were in the Civil War, and 2 of them didn't know it, but they were at Gettysburg at the same time. They didn't know each other. One from my father, one from my mother's side. So with all this background, that's what I was thinking about when we entered the war. All of my buddies, I grew up in Cedar, New Jersey, which is on the coast of New Jersey. All of them had fathers who either fought or died in the war. One died on Iwo Jima, 2 died either at D-Day or a few days afterwards. That's what we grew up with. And every Memorial Day, they'd have a service, and they'd bring in an honor guard, and they'd shoot the M1s up in the air, and we were young kids, 10, 11 years old, and when the brass would, when the shells were expelled, there's brass on the ground. And that was the moment for us, because we would run over and grab that brass, and that was like a real, a wonderful thing to have. So that was the background in which I went in the Army. I wanted to go in the Army. I joined ROTC, I went to Bucknell University, and I could have dropped out after my sophomore year. But I'm going to serve. My father, all these other people, I want to serve. So when I got to my first duty station after I went to Officer Basic, and I was in Fort Miles, New Jersey. Fort Miles, New Jersey is a garden place. It's a wonderful place to be. It's one of the easiest places to be at. But I kept reading about our guys. This was in May, March, so I decided to put in my papers to volunteer to go to Vietnam. I had to be there. And then they beat me to it. They signed me to Vietnam anyway. And I went over in June of 12 June 1966. Now those dates are important. Marine's a little different. We served 12 months, 1 year. Why 1 year? I was told that, there'll be a quick war, but also I think they were trying to minimize the fact that we'd away from our families. And by the way, we hadn't had too many wars in the jungles, and it was hot as hell over there, from what I'm told. So they minimized it to 1 year. Here's the problem that began to come up. As we got ready to go over, all the information was, you're going to get your shots, and by the way, here's get your uniforms, and you get lightweight uniform. Nobody ever said to us, here's the history of Vietnam. Here's what the people are like. Here's the culture. We knew nothing about it. And so we went over there, it was like us. It was no wonder that we would call them epithets, because they were fourth world, fifth world country. They had nothing like what we had. But the important thing here is that when I got there, and every Vietnam veteran, I don't know, have you, Jim, but we flew over. I was lucky. Some took the ship over. When they opened that door from the airplane and you step out, we stepped off in Saigon. The air that hits you is like walking into a sauna fully clothed. It just knocks you back. You can't breathe. You say, I can't believe I'm going to be in this for a year. That's the thing that I most remember, the first impression I had. Well, one thing led to another, and I ended up going from Saigon. Now, Vietnam is shaped, the total Vietnam is shaped like an S. And it goes like this. Now, the top of North Vietnam, the north part, we're the southern part, so our S comes out like this and then comes in. At the very top is a DMZ, and it's about 50 miles wide. There's a river there. They chose that 17th parallel because in 1954, after the French decided we've had enough, Dien Bien Phu, they were whipped there, and it was decided that's where it would be. It was a heavily fortified zone. And so we were trying to fortify it and keep it there. But here's where the problem got to be. The North Vietnamese were bringing supplies down what got known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It wasn't a real trail, it became roads. And we began to bomb that trail. And we'd fly over afterwards, try to do a bomb damage assessment. I couldn't see diddly because it was triple canopy. Later on in the war, after Agent Orange had gone back, you could better see the trail. But they were smart. They operated at night, not during the day when our bombs were falling, so we couldn't see them. But there's three events that really stick out in my mind as I think about many events, but here's three of them. One of them was I went to an intelligence briefing. The 3rd Marine Division was right next to our airfield, and so they were conducting this intelligence. They had captured I'm not sure if he was a deserter or they captured whatever, but he said to them, hey, he was along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. He said, you're bombing us, you're hitting us, you know where we are, but you're not hurting us because we're 20 feet or more below ground. These guys were smart. Here's the most technologically advanced country in the history of the planet, and we're not going to get them. Because now remember, they had been fighting the French for 10 years. They had been fighting others. They knew how to fight a war, a guerrilla war especially, much more than we did. We had no idea how to fight a guerrilla war. We were fighting basically a conventional war. But our leaders kept pointing out these rosy pictures. I got a question I'd love to ask one of them. I did run to Westmoreland once, and I started to talk to him, and he walked away. But regardless, they weren't listening. If they had been at that intelligence briefing, they would have heard this defector, whatever he was, say, you got us, you're right on top of us, but you're not hurting us, because we move at night and we're buried underground. They weren't listening to that. The second event that happened that I didn't think they were listening to very well was most of the operations that were conducted, you'd hear about them. If I wasn't on or involved in it, I would, hear about them. One of them was called Hastings, U.S. Marine Corps, Prairie, July of 1966. Prairie was successful and pushed the enemy back. Very nice, very good. Then they decided, we're doing so well, let's extend it. Let's do Hastings for another 10 days. That's how they named these things. And this one didn't go so well. When it was all over, the Marines had 225 KIA, 1,200 wounded, and they claimed to have killed 1,500 MBA. And then they walked away from that action. And I remember thinking, we were talking, all the observers would get together and just shoot the breeze. Why are you leaving? Forget it, it's Don Ha, it's right up in the DMZ, Kantian, it's all in there. They would pull back to their base at Don Ha. Well, when I was taught, you took territory, you defeated the enemy, you held on to it. That wasn't Vietnam. This wasn't the way it was being fought. I remembered that, and I'm thinking, what are our leaders thinking? You spent 225 men killed, 1,200 wounded, and what do we got to show for it? Later on, when I came back, I realized that, reading it, it was a war of attrition in terms of our leaders, Westmoreland and those kinds of people. Well, guess what? Did you ask the families? Did you ask those soldiers if they were willing to be attrited so you could kill as many of the enemies so they would finally give up the fight? Is that what our mission was? To kill more of them than us, and then maybe they'd give up and quit? They weren't listening, they weren't leading us properly. The third event that really stays with me to this day, and I can see it vividly, it was sometime in mid-1967, and the monsoons had finally quit. Monsoons and I-Corps limited operations because the cloud was so low and it rained. It was cold. Only 60 degrees, but it was cold. It was tough to do much in there. And helicopters were coming in. And just when you heard helicopters, it meant an operation was starting. They were going to go pick up Marines and take them into combat. Well, I said, gee, what's this all about? Nobody knew. So I walked over past our large tent where the hospital was, and I'll forget this. Coming off a helicopter was a Vietnamese woman, young woman. In her arms was a baby. Down the front of her was blood. There's blood on the baby, and she's running, crying and screaming, and somebody's directing her to the hospital. Something had happened. I went back to our OP and I said, what's going on here? Well, and they said, oh, no, this is bad, this is not good. And apparently, 2 Air Force jets were flying over that village a few days before that. One of the jets lost an engine, probably. He went down, got out, and I guess the villagers turned him over to the VC, the local VC. They captured him. I guess they had a mock trial. I don't really know exactly what happened for sure, but I guess he was executed. Well, his wingmate, he's pretty pissed about this. So what does he do? He goes up, fully armed, and took another, and they strafed this village. Men, women, children, I don't know how many men were there, but they strafed it. I believe there was 400 casualties. I know My Lai would come later in '68, but to me it was just flat out murder. And he got it. I don't know whatever happened to him, but that was what the story was. That stayed in my mind. I said, what are we doing here with something like this? And this poor woman running in with her baby. I don't know how many more were killed as a result of it. But I kept thinking, are our leaders aware of this? Why was this Air Force officer, nobody's here in the Air Force, why was he not court-martialed? Why was he allowed to go settle scores and revenge, but against the wrong people? Women and children? That's not right. And I just thought, this war is really screwed up. And so when I came home, I started on our last mission, I was done, but on the plane home, I was with 3 other officers, and we were sitting together, and one of them said, if I got interviewed, if I got off this airplane, I would say, this is crazy. We should get out of this time war. We're losing it, we're not winning it, we're not fighting it right. I couldn't quite say that, but I agreed with it. I said, this isn't good. This is not the right way to go. We should be going to this. One final part to this. When I got home, I went to graduate school, the University of Pennsylvania, for an MBA from the Wharton School. The demonstrations hadn't started yet. They started in Wisconsin in October of '67. By the time they got to Pennsylvania, which is known as the friendly city, University of Philadelphia, very passive, and their demonstrations were going. But the thing I learned real quick while I was there was, don't tell anybody you had been to Vietnam. Don't say a word. And none of us did. I roomed with 4 other veterans in the house, and nobody talked about it. We just, nope. And forevermore, any resume I put out, I would just put Lieutenant U.S. Army. That was it. I worked for Colgate-Palmolive and Nabisco Brands as a product manager on Nabisco shredded wheats. I told no one that I had been in Vietnam. Nobody ever asked me, I never knew. And went through my whole existence like that until, I hate to say it, Iraq. And suddenly, Iraq legitimized the service. And people would see us and they, oh, you were in Vietnam, right? Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you for your service. Boy, was that a different situation from what we came home to. Because when we came home, the worst thing that happened to me, I talked to my buddies about it, he had something similar, was somebody mentioned I was at a party, said, oh, it's Toby, you went to Vietnam. This guy looks at me and says, you're a baby killer, aren't you? And I was so shocked by that. I just turned on my heels and didn't say a word and walked away. And I'm so glad I did. But that's the way we were led to believe. Look, I love my country. I think this country, there's nothing like it. I mean, I've been to Haiti, which is the most poor country on probably the planet. And I think we have a tremendous amount of optimism, a tremendous amount of good things that we're doing, despite what's going on. I guess the country's divided over our current administration. But we are such a great country. We've done so much. And I just hope that our leaders have learned something from Vietnam and they take it with them going forward. Thanks.